She sat at the corner of the little cafe, fingers trembling as she smoothed the hem of her faded dress, her heart thudding with both nervousness and hope. Emily had exactly $5 tucked into her purse, $5 to her name. It wasn't even enough to cover a proper dinner, but it was all she could manage for a blind date her friend had insisted she go on. Maybe he'll see your heart, her friend had said, not your wallet. But Emily wasn't sure hearts counted much these days. She had learned too many times that people often saw the shoes you wore before the soul you carried. Still, she showed up, because something deep inside her whispered that she couldn't give up on life, not yet. Across the cafe, at a table where the light from the chandelier glimmered off polished silverware, another figure was watching quietly. Michael, a single dad and CEO of a successful company, had chosen this cafe simply because it was his daughter's favorite spot for muffins after school. Today, he was here alone, finishing paperwork between meetings. He noticed Emily the moment she walked in, not because of her dress or her appearance, but because of the way she hesitated at the door, as though she wasn't sure she belonged in a place like this. Her date arrived late, a man with an expensive watch and an air of arrogance. He didn't even look at Emily when he sat down. Instead, he flipped open the menu and said flatly, "You're covering your half, right?" Emily's cheeks burned. She forced a small smile and nodded, fingers brushing the $5 bill in her purse. She already knew she couldn't afford most of what was on the menu. She prayed he wouldn't notice when she ordered the cheapest item, just a small cup of soup. Michael kept glancing over, unable to tear his eyes away. Something about her humility, the quiet way she folded her napkin, the way she listened intently, even when the man across from her talked only about himself, it struck a chord in him. She reminded him of himself years ago, back when he had nothing but a daughter in his arms and a broken heart from a wife who walked away. The evening grew heavier. Emily's date complained about the slow service, about the cheapness of the cafe, and even made a snide remark about Emily's soup. "That all you're eating?" he scoffed. "Guess that works for your budget." The words sliced deeper than he knew. Emily lowered her eyes, holding back tears. She told herself not to cry, not here, not in front of strangers. That was when Michael stood up. He didn't plan it. He didn't even think. He just moved. Walking over, he gave a polite nod to the man and said, "Sorry to interrupt, but they're asking for you at the front." The man looked confused. "What? Who's asking for me?" Michael leaned in, lowering his voice. "Your car's blocking the driveway. You should probably check before it gets towed." Annoyed, the man stomped away, muttering under his breath. And just like that, Emily was left sitting there, staring at her half-finished soup, clutching her purse like a lifeline. Michael pulled out the chair across from her. "May I?" Emily blinked, unsure what to say. I don't even know you." He smiled gently. "Then let me introduce myself. I'm Michael, and I couldn't help noticing. You deserve a lot better than the company you had tonight." Her throat tightened. She wasn't used to strangers noticing her, let alone speaking kindly. For a long moment she didn't answer. Finally she whispered, "I only had $5 to spend. I thought maybe if I tried, someone would see me for more than that." Michael's chest ached at her words. He thought of his daughter, of how he'd want her treated someday. Without another word, he signaled the waiter and ordered a full meal for Emily. Not extravagant, not flashy. Just warm food that filled the table with comforting smells. At first she resisted. "I can't let you," but he stopped her gently. "Sometimes kindness isn't about who deserves it. Sometimes it's just about reminding someone they matter." She ate slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks, though she tried to hide them. Michael didn't pry, didn't ask too many questions. He simply listened as she opened up little by little, about working 2 jobs, about sending money home to her younger brother, about the loneliness of always being overlooked. Somewhere between her laughter at his story about burning pancakes for his daughter and the quiet sigh she released after finishing her meal, Emily realized something. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen. Not for her lack, not for her brokenness, but for her heart. Her date never came back, but it didn't matter, because that night a stranger had noticed what no one else did. And for Michael, who had built an empire yet still felt gaps in his life, something shifted too. Watching Emily's resilience, her dignity despite struggle, reminded him of the power of humanity stripped bare of wealth or titles. 2 lives, seated at the same cafe, had collided in the most unexpected way. And both walked away changed, one with hope rekindled, the other with faith restored in the quiet strength of a soul who had nothing but gave everything anyway. Emily stepped out of the cafe that night with a warmth in her chest she hadn't felt in years. The cold air nipped at her cheeks, but her heart was still full from the unexpected kindness of a stranger who sat across from her when she needed it most. She looked up at the stars, clutching her purse with its single $5 bill still inside. She hadn't spent it. Somehow it felt symbolic, as if life was telling her she still had something left, a beginning rather than an end. Michael walked out behind her, his coat draped casually over his arm. For a moment he hesitated, unsure if he should say more. He didn't want to frighten her, didn't want to make her think his kindness had strings, but when she turned and smiled at him, a shy, grateful smile that carried both vulnerability and strength, he knew he couldn't just walk away. "Do you have a way home?" he asked gently. Emily nodded. "The bus stops a few blocks away. I'll be fine." Michael hesitated again. "At least let me walk you. It's late." And so they walked, slowly, through quiet streets, speaking in snippets that turned into stories. Emily laughed when Michael told her how his little girl insisted on sleeping with all 12 of her stuffed animals. And Michael listened intently when Emily shared how she once dreamed of becoming a teacher, but had put her life on hold to care for her family. By the time they reached the bus stop, Michael felt something stir in him, a deep, quiet admiration that went beyond attraction. This wasn't about appearances or circumstance. It was about the undeniable pull of two souls recognizing something in each other. Before Emily boarded the bus, Michael slipped a small card into her hand. "Not because I pity you," he said firmly, meeting her eyes, "but because I'd like to see you again. Maybe next time, no blind dates, just dinner with me." Emily stared down at the card, then back at him, her eyes shining. "You don't even know me." Michael smiled. "I know enough, and I'd like to know more." For days Emily held onto that card. She almost didn't call, her insecurities whispering that someone like him could never truly want someone like her. But something in her heart, that spark from the cafe, pushed her to dial his number. One dinner turned into two. Then walks in the park. Then evenings where Michael's daughter, Lily, would cling to Emily's hand as though she had known her forever. Emily, who once felt invisible, was now part of laughter, of shared meals, of bedtime stories. Months later, Michael stood in that same cafe with Emily by his side. He held her hand as though he'd never let it go, his daughter sitting happily between them with a muffin. The waiter, recognizing them, smiled warmly. Emily looked around, her chest tight with gratitude. "Funny, isn't it?" She whispered to Michael, "I came here once with only $5, and now I've found more than I ever dreamed of." Michael squeezed her hand, his voice soft but certain. "Sometimes the richest moments in life come when we have the least. That night I saw you, and I thank God I did." Emily leaned her head against his shoulder, her eyes filling with tears. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't just surviving. She was living, surrounded by love she never thought she'd find. The poor girl who had walked into a cafe with only $5 had walked out with something priceless: hope, family, and a future she never imagined.